Hello, saints and scholars. Welcome back to Theo Life with me, Patrick Stitt, where today we're going to ask, why is there stuff? One of the great questions that human beings have always had is, why is there things all around us? There's light, and there's heat, and there's Taco Bell, and there's cars, and there's clothes, and there's people, and there's air, and there's shoes and ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings. And you might start to think, like, how did all this stuff and things get here? Why do we live in a universe that's full up of stuff? Might seem like maybe a weird question, but when you think about it, it's actually a huge question. Think about the craziness of your situation. Here you are, sitting in your comfortable room or wherever you are, cafe, watching me on an indescribably complicated little machine while internet is buzzing around your head at billions of megabytes a second. And there you are, watching me talk about these philosophical ideas from Osaka, Japan. And this tiny lump of grey matter is firing electrons and protons and crazyons all over the place as your mind expands with new ideas. In just me telling this story, I pass through dozens of pieces of electronics and millions of bytes of information across thousands of miles to be processed from brain to brain so magical things like ideas can happen. Woo! We live in an exciting world. Why? Why is there so much wonderful things around us, like ideas and information and electronics and electricity? It's really crazy when you think about it. From a Christian perspective, we can look at this wonderful, orderly universe and thank the great Creator for the amazing world that He made us. But other people, while acknowledging they live in an incredible universe, might see its creation or the existence of matter as more of a mystery and something they do not attribute to God.
Science be praised.
Theists have looked to the universe for thousands of years and seen the fingerprints of an almighty, timeless, powerful creator all around them. And this incredible universe has been a testimony to the existence and the power and the wonder of God.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands.
So today, we're going to examine what is called the Cosmological Argument. And we're going to examine this Cosmological Argument from three different approaches. First, we'll look at Thomas Aquinas' Quine Viae, or 5 ways. Then we'll look at the Kalam Cosmological Argument. Then the Leibnizian Cosmological Argument. To begin, we're going to look at Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways. These are sometimes known as the 5 proofs of God. We're just going to look at the first 3 of the 5 ways, and we'll examine the last 2 later on in the course. The first argument is called the unmoved mover. You will notice you live in a universe where everything is hurling in motion. Be it cars zipping past you all the time, gusts of winds and mighty tsunamis, billions of bytes of data constantly flowing around your head at every single moment, and us humans running and jumping and dancing and farting and singing and swinging and moving all of the time. But if you measure all of that movement, you will note that everything that moves was moved by something else. You will note that this toy may move, but it only moves because I'm moving it. And I'm only moving because my brain is telling my muscles to contract in a certain way, which will cause my thumb to bounce up and down. That movement only exists because I have been consuming calories that allow my brain to produce enough energy to make this happen. I create motion because my body is constantly taking in things that are full of energy, and those things themselves came about from motion and from energy. If you were just sitting and looking out your window and all of a sudden a ball flies across your side of vision, you would think that somebody nearby had actually kicked that ball to set it in motion. Thomas Aquinas looked at this incredible universe that is absolutely bustling with emotion, and he noted that everything that moved because it was moved upon by something else. So a moved thing was moved by a mover, which 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 was moved by a mover. And since you can't go back eternally, he determined that there must be an original mover who themselves was unmoved by something else. Thomas Aquinas looked at the universe and determined there must be an unmoved mover. A mover who moves things but themselves was not originally moved. Thomas Aquinas goes further in his next argument by looking at the uncaused cause. Everything around you was caused by something. I was caused to make this video because I was invited to do so by Bethany Global University to teach you about apologetics. Bethany was caused to do this course because they found that teaching people about apologetics makes them more effective cross-cultural ministers. That was caused because centuries of experience have shown us that if we train ministers in a certain way, we find they're more effective in their cultural context. This was caused because millennia of sending out people to preach the Christian message, we've seen thousands of ways that don't work, and we've seen really a few dozen ways that have proven to be quite effective. This was caused because a Peregrinus from Galilee started preaching about the kingdom of God had come, and everyone got kind of mad about it, and then they killed him on a cross, and he died, and then he came out again and was like, whoa, what just happened? And they started Christianity. That was kind of a big deal. Once again, Thomas Aquinas looked at the universe and determined that everything that happens seems to have a cause. And he asked himself, what was the original cause of everything? Now, the original cause couldn't have been caused by something, because if it was caused by something, then what caused that, which what caused that, which what caused that, which what caused that? I'm going to bring you back into this infinite loop. So Thomas Aquinas determined there had to be an uncaused causer. The third argument is called the argument from contingency. You will note that everything that exists was contingent upon something else creating it in order for it to exist. Everything around you is there because something put it there. Where did you come from?
Mommy.
Mommy. Okay, that's pretty good. And where did mommy come from?
Her mommy.
And where did her mommy come from?
Her mommy.
And where did her mommy come from?
Her mommy.
And where did her mommy come from?
Her mommy.
And where did her mommy come from?
Her mommy.
And where did her mommy come from? Where did her mommy come from?
Etc., etc., etc.
If everything's contingent upon something, there has to be one initial being that was not contingent upon anything else. This would be what's called a non-contingent being. A non-contingent being is a being that exists without being dependent upon another being's existence. A crude example of this would actually be numerical value. If nothing exists, then the numerical value of all of existence would be 0. Even without things existing, you would still have numerical value. If things did exist, then how many things exist, and how big are they, and how long are they, and how much do they weigh? Then you would have lots of numbers to talk about. But since numerical value exists, whether or not other things exist, numerical value is somewhat of a non-contingent idea. But Thomas Aquinas noted that for everything to exist and everything being contingent upon something else, there must be a non-contingent being. A being who exists outside of the universe, outside of time, and outside of everything we understand. So Thomas Aquinas looked at the universe and said, all this motion was caused by other motion, so there must originally be an unmoved mover. And every effect has a cause which caused it to be affected, which was caused by something, which was caused by something, which was caused by something. So there must be an original cause of all things, which itself was uncaused. Finally, Thomas Aquinas noted that everything was contingent upon something else existing. And if everything was contingent upon something else, then there must be an original being that exists uncontingent upon anything else. Thomas Aquinas noted that this being must be outside of time, outside of the physical universe, very intelligent, very powerful, very creative, and kind of amazing, aka what the rest of us call God. Let's conclude by discussing a potential objection known as an infinite regress. An infinite regress is an endless chain of causes leading backwards without an initial cause. Some might argue that it's completely consistent for a mover to be moved by a mover, to be moved by a mover, to be moved by a mover, going on into eternity. To make this case, you would have to argue that the universe as we know it is actually infinite and never had a beginning. Yet there are a few problems with this argument that make it unlikely. First off, an actual infinite does not exist in creation, and second, actual infinites are logically impossible. The concept of something being truly infinite is an idea that only exists in theoretical math. We don't see anything in all of creation that is actually infinite. Let's imagine for a second that all of creation was actually infinite. That means that every conceivable thing that could ever have possibly happened to the universe would have had to have happened. The universe would have to have been destroyed numerous times. The universe would have to then be recreated. But if it was recreated, would it be a beginning? What would that be like? Was it truly destroyed if they could recreate it again? There's a famous thought experiment called Hilbert's Hotel. It asks you to imagine a hotel with an infinite number of rooms and an infinite number of guests. Let's imagine a new guest shows up to the hotel and wants to have room number 1. This would mean that guests in room number 1 would have to move to room number 2, and guests in room number 2 would have to move to room number 3, and guests in room number 3 would have to move to room number 4. and guests in 93,175 would have to move to room 93,176, and so on and so forth. And the idea is kind of so ridiculous and doesn't make any sense and wouldn't actually work that Hilbert was trying to demonstrate that such a hotel couldn't actually exist. And it was designed to prove the absurdity of an actual infinite existing in the universe. Since things can't have an actual infinite regress, we have determined that actual infinites do not exist, therefore you can't have an infinite regress of movers, causers, or contingent beings, thereby proving that the infinite regress is false. Since we can show that an infinite regress is impossible, there cannot be an infinite number of causers. Therefore, Thomas Aquinas determined that since everything has a cause and there cannot be an infinite amount of causers, once upon a time there had to be an original cause that themselves was uncaused. And since everything that moves was moved by something else, there had to be an original mover that was themselves not moved by anything. And since everything is contingent upon something else for its existence, there has to be an initial being that themselves is not contingent upon anybody else. Thomas Aquinas' arguments do not directly prove the existence of the Christian God, but do support the idea of a being that has all the same characteristics as the Christian God, therefore building the first steps of a cumulative case for the existence of the God of the Bible.